I strongly believe that, when we keep on saying that, God made Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve, we also need to hold on at that point and ask ourselves, who made Steve? You know.
Meet Reverend Jide Macaulay, who is the founding pastor and the CEO of House of Rainbow. Born in London, he is an openly gay British-Nigerian, an author, an inspirational speaker, and a HIV Positive Activist. Jide holds a degree in Law and Theology. He has won several awards, including the Black LGBT Community Award for Man of the Year. Are you too gay for God?
Well, actually, it's a question that I've been asking myself as well, and also asking my church as well. And it's also a subject of a BBC documentary. And I think that the question is really asking the church, am I too gay for God? Because the church still discriminates against gay people in England. I can understand in countries like Nigeria, Malawi, Zambia and Uganda, where homosexuality is criminalized. I can understand that. But in England, gay people can, enter into a same-sex marriage. But the church still discriminates against the gay people, particularly on marriage and civil partnership.
It's different in Scotland and Wales, though.
It's different in Scotland and Wales, and that's why I was focusing on England. Many gay people are faithful, loyal, and to the church. And the question is...
And conflicted,
and conflicted as well, because I think the reality is that, as a gay man going to church, you wonder whether or not, the church wants you.
God, if you believe in God, He created you. And I feel like whether it's the church or some people, individuals, are trying to outsmart God in a way.
Do you know, I like that. I like that statement. Are people trying to outsmart God? I don't think so. I don't think that people are trying to outsmart God. I think that people sometimes are, exercising their opinions in their own understanding, and I think that I still would support. The important thing is that we need to look at the opportunity to bring education, because homophobia is a learned behavior and it can be unlearned. We need to say to parents who have lesbian, gay, bisexual children that their children are a gift from God, not an abomination as they have been taught.
Something you've been accused of.
I've been accused of saying that, it's not right to tell gay people that God adores them or God affirms them, But I strongly believe that, when we keep on saying that, God made Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve, we also need to hold on at that point and ask ourselves, who made Steve?
You've tried to pray your sexuality away at some point.
Yes.
So you believed in what you've been taught by society to that extent that you've decided, okay, you married a woman.
Yeah.
You tried to ignore and, get rid of who you are at one point in your life.
You see, Angelika, I think that, when you grow up in an African family and environment, and your family is also a conservative Christian home, you are taught very differently. The principle with Christianity, conservative Christianity and African tradition is that, you grow up, you're a boy and you be a man, you man up, you act like a man, and you get married to a woman and you have children. And also including education as well, if you're from a working class family, middle class, upper class family in Nigeria and Africa, you get a good education as well. But the difficulty is that nobody talks to you about the differences in sexuality. No one has said anything about homosexuality.
I don't think that's specific to just Africa.
Well,
that's a
but
common issue.
Exactly. From it's
your
very
story,
common in the context that I grew up in. But also, in my environment, in my home in Nigeria, where I grew up, in my church in Nigeria, homosexuality was never mentioned. So when I started to understand my own sexuality and attraction to persons of my own gender, it was more confusing. Pastoral care to talk about homosexuality in the most positive way does not exist in the Christian community that I grew up in. So I had to do everything to conform. I went through all the struggles. So in my teenage years, I clearly knew that I was gay, but I didn't even know the word gay or homosexuality when I was growing up until when I was probably about 18, 19 years old. So, and by now, I was struggling seriously. You know, I have had friends who are gay. I have known a few people who are gay. I know that I'm gay, but I'm still struggling. So I connected that struggle to the fact that I was a fallen child of God, that I'm an abomination because that's what I've been told, throughout my upbringing up to that point. So I took time out, as a Christian to pray and fast. And for me, in the tradition that I was raised, you fast for 40 days and 40 nights because the significance is that because Jesus Christ fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, right? He was able to defeat the enemy. I felt that, homosexuality in my context was the enemy. And for me, it was important that I said my prayers and pray to God to get rid of the sexuality that I'm feeling. And when I finished my time of prayer, there was a young woman in my church, that I, became friendly with, and I asked if she would be my girlfriend, and she said yes. I took that moment as my belief that God has answered my prayers and that I'm no longer gay
Right,
again.
so you took it as a sign.
I took it as a sign because now I have a girlfriend, so I cannot be gay. And I think to me that is where the problem actually began. My attraction to the same sex did not disappear. It actually got stronger the more I dig myself into a heterosexual relationship. It got stronger, and then I got more depressed because I can handle this battle inside my soul.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it, and but now, I mean, I like to share my story, and I like to take people on the journey that, there's nothing wrong with you growing up as gay, but I mean, that you have to understand and be strong.
Yeah, which I think is, it must be incredibly inspirational what you're doing, because if you just think about how many people find themselves in that position, and I think it must be really difficult to then, well, how do you get out of that situation where you've created this whole life where you don't belong and you know it, that you don't belong there? It's nothing you can ignore.
I feel that communities and families can help. And that is why some of the work that we do today, we try to work to address the issues of physical, emotional neglect, and also spiritual and domestic abuse on the grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity. There's a catalog of things that we need to address within our communities.
You were taught that what you are is a sin. What I wanted to ask you is, where did you find the power to then come out of it and be like, no, I'm fine as I am. This is how I was created by the very creator that you believe in. Where do you still find that power? Because it must be a really difficult path that you taken.
It is very difficult.
Fighting the world, literally.
It's very difficult. It takes guts, and I think that I look at pioneers and people that have brought change to our world. I look at people like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, even Mother Teresa. Well, I've named a lot. But you see, the reality is that, sometimes you just have to make this sacrifice for the change. And I think it started with me. I've been through so many levels of sadness, depression, stress, just to be myself. And I felt, look, you know what? This is not working. I just want to be honest. And to be quite, the reality is that I didn't even ask to be an activist or an advocate. This was thrust upon me by some of the actions, that I took. And for me, in that moment, I also began to challenge myself that will people like myself be able to go to church? Does God really
So you didn't
care?
feel like, you know what, it would be much easier actually to just leave
Do you know, honestly,
church and just
I
go and be who you are wherever you want to be with that.
listen. I took those decisions as well, right? Because when I first came out as gay, I was married to a woman. The church got involved in my separation and divorce, and helped to kick me out of my home and made me homeless. So I did have an attitude towards church and church people, and I didn't go to church for about 2 years. Then when I found out, I discovered another church where LGBT people are welcomed in this church, and that was the beginning of my own recovery from the hatred, from the self-hatred. I made a decision with God in my heart that I want to start House of Rainbow, a place that LGBT people like myself in Nigeria can go to and be themselves. So I've been on that journey too. I've been on the extreme end of religious homophobia, and I'm actually still on that journey of extreme religious homophobia. It's still happening today. But I think that the reality is that I have a better understanding of who I am and who I belong to. I belong to God. And that is why one of my key messages, if I leave a legacy, I just want people to understand that GAY means God adores you. But there is no doubt that we still have a long way to go to work with families, to re-educate religious leaders, to re-educate our politicians and our lawmakers, to get our society and our communities, to come on board, to understand us. That is why, listen, nothing was by accident, because when we started House of Rainbow in Nigeria, I thought, oh, we're going to go to Nigeria and just start a church, and we're going to fellowship, we're going to sing praise and worship, and that's it, we're going to go
Rainbows
home.
everywhere.
Yeah, rainbow everywhere. But it was not easy. I think the biggest lesson I learned in starting House of Rainbow is that we're not a single story. We have multiple issues in our individual lives. When people came to House of Rainbow with broken arms, with bruised eyes, some came with their luggages saying that they've been kicked out of their home. The injustices was just there. House of Rainbow almost immediately became, the human rights church. Because within months of starting the organization, I found myself in front of the Nigerian parliament appealing to them in the Senate not to pass laws to further criminalize homosexuality. I took risk that I didn't calculate at all. And then the attack was imminent. I was attacked in the streets. My home was vandalized in Nigeria. I was facing death threats almost on a daily basis. If I hadn't left the country when I did, I would have been dead today. But it didn't stop me, because I have this great conviction in my heart and also in God that God is faithful. Even the Bible tells us in Jeremiah, it said, God knew us before we were conceived in our mother's womb. That is enough for me. People can look at this and say, actually, this person looks like me. He's black, he's African, he's gay, and I can identify with everything that he said. I want people to know that, if you want to decide that you want to come out as a Christian, or as someone who's gay and a Christian, make sure that you're surrounded with support. I have the level of support that is, it's incredible. I mean, I have spiritual
your community?
directors, my community, my friends. I have people I can turn to when I'm feeling very low, and I also have family of choice, because even my own family do not fully support me with my sexuality. I mean, my father is also a minister, in the church, and he's a Christian leader, quite powerful Christian leader in Nigeria. He's the principal of the second largest theological seminary. And I think that, he couldn't even begin to fathom the fact that his son is a homosexual. And that has meant that we've had an incredible separation of our relationship. So for a few years now, we've not spoken to each other. It hurts me. There is no doubt about that. Because as much as I want a relationship with him, I also want him to be able to accept me wholeheartedly.
Absolutely, I think all of us want that. That's why, I said I find your story incredibly inspirational, because there are so many obstacles that I think people forget.
Yeah.
It's not just the society, it's not just the Church of England or Nigeria. There is the family and the learned behaviours and, the environment they grew up in and what they believe in that stops them, from fully accepting you and actually seeing you as, wow, you're doing so much good in the world and empowering and supporting so many people. And being just, I don't know, blind to that, would you say?
Well, I mean, the reality is that, I believe that I'm taking the risk so that others don't have to take the risk. I have suffered so much depression, pain, and shame so that others do not suffer the same. And I think that for me, my hope is that, those who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, plus, will be able to see my story and it will give them hope to live their life. Even if they decide to live their life in the closet, they will know who they are. The pressure for gays and lesbians to conform with the traditional norms of heteronormativity is very high. And people are doing crazy things and doing terrible things in order to fill that gap. I'm living with HIV. I'm a religious leader. I'm gay. So it's almost as if it's a cocktail for disaster. I think we can make great changes in Africa and around the world by beginning to invest in how best to understand same-sex relationship. And for me and the work that we do, same-sex relationship has existed from the day human beings were created. That means definitely it's been part of many cultures all over the world. Not a few, all cultures, have a history of homosexuality. But because a group of people, legislators and politicians or conservative Christians or conservative religious people do not like this kind of quote-unquote life, they decided to bring a law against it. And the reality is that we have seen examples of that. There were times where there were laws against black people, against people of color.
We've done all sorts of things, yes.
There are laws against Jews, That is why the whole history about the Holocaust and slavery is important for us to understand that we cannot use this methodology to then abuse other minority groups. You understand? I mean, it was Desmond Tutu that said that, let's be careful, because when we finish resolving the abuse of minorities, we will find another group of minorities to abuse. It's very easy.
It's a recurring theme in history.
It is a recurring theme in history. We want to take this radically inclusive ministry also into academia. We want to take it to universities. We want to take it to theological schools, because a lot of the problem is that religious leaders come into their religious communities where they're going to serve with zero knowledge of LGBT people. That is a problem.
There's so much I want to ask you. But I think what's important for me and some of the messages and some of the issues I'm trying to highlight is I want to ask you, how do you take care of your pink matter? Because I think self-care, especially for everyone, is incredibly important. But when you're fighting that many battles, and you come from a place of love, so I'm using the word fighting, but, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, in life, it doesn't even have to be in the context that I am struggling or that I'm fighting. Self-care is important. Otherwise, you will have a fragmented mental health. And, you know, I have spoken about mental health. I've spoken about my own mental health, and I want to own it because we're all affected to a degree. And a lot of the challenges that I face, for example, the rejection from my own family still hurts. And there are times when I talk about it that I'm moved emotionally. The rejection of my father, the rejection of my son, the ostracism of my siblings is just totally unacceptable. And that is why I have been so privileged to have family of choice. So the LGBT community is my family of choice. The people living with the HIV are my family of choice. I have got two amazing godchildren. They form part of my family of choice. So, and there are many others who have given me homes. And that actually helps, you know, to center. I do take time to pray. I take time to meditate. And I enjoy and love walking. So I do take time for silent time. And I think that that's helped me a lot. And I'm not afraid to also say that, you know, I do, you know, use therapies, counseling, and spiritual directors, you know, as part of my self-care. And most crucially, I do take a break. I take a holiday where I do nothing, just relax and enjoy myself. And I think these are very, very crucial and very important. I mean, I have to be more disciplined about that because, you know, I mean, if you're busy and you need things done and you want things done, you tend to forget your day off and you start working on your day off.
I think self-discipline is incredibly important.
I mean, talking about self-discipline, let me just add one more point on that. Social media is like a sinkhole sometimes, you know. It drags you in and it keeps you there. So for me,
That's how it's designed.
that's exactly
To precisely that.
to hook you there. But what I've done for myself is that, you know, of course, you set your phone. So I set my phone to switch itself off at 9 p.m. And then resume at 8 a.m. So
you have those little things in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps. You know, you've got to be really disciplined to do that. And it takes, you need willpower as well because you can break your own rules.
It's just incredible what you do. Your work is just absolutely incredible. And, you know, the number of people that you support is just bravo.
Thank you so much. If people need more information, they can always contact us on any of our social media platform.
I'll be putting links.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we all have a website as well as houseofrainbow.org. So all of those things are important to anyone that is watching.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for today.
Thank you very much.
Great pleasure.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you.